Good afternoon, everyone in the audience and my esteemed panelists. The topic we are going to discuss today is New Age Governance Frameworks. Now, these are quite heavy words. What does governance mean? It can mean different things to different people. It can be 100 things together. Vedika ji abhi bol ke gayi that we should be talking about data in governance. Some people say it should be about technology. It could be about transparency, accountability, enabling environment, school quality, school choice. Hundreds of things can be put into this single word called governance. Now, the big problem we know, which is inflicting our school education sector, is the poor learning outcomes that we have been listening to and talking about as well. Even as of today, while there have been silver lining, while there have been signs of improvement, but still we know about 1/4 of children are not able to, 1/4 of children in grade 5 are not able to do their basic reading and mathematics, as has been told by surveys after surveys. And no discussion on governance can be complete if we are not addressing this real elephant in the room called learning outcomes. So my question is then, can governance be the answer to the problem of poor learning outcomes in our schools? And if yes, then how? So let me kick off this discussion with a very simple story. This story is about Hina, a child. Hina's mother stood at a tea stall, strategically positioned at a vantage crossroad, from where she could see the two schools a few hundred meters apart. One government school and one low-fee private school. She is holding both their admission forms in one hand and sipping tea with the other. She has had a hectic day as she started her home at 8 a.m. and it's 12 noon now. She was invited to see both the schools with Hina, and she just got done. Hina is a 6-year-old girl who has just turned eligible for grade 1 admission. She is shy, doesn't talk much, and is scared at the thought of going to school itself. Now the mother is silently reminiscing. On one side, I have this government school promising free education under the Right to Education Act. Big signboard having CM's photo. It also says free uniform, free books, money for the girl child directly in the account, and every possible slogan of the state. She thinks it's good for me, but it's a government school after all. Will it secure my Hina's future? On the other pathway is a private school, English medium, digital, smart class, teachers talking more sweetly, and a fee which is 1,950 rupees a month. Just low enough to sound feasible for her, but her financial situation still doesn't allow her, because it is high enough to hurt her, and she'll have to compromise on her lifestyle somewhere else. Both the headmasters and the principals she met, they claim to meet very high standards. Hina's mother doesn't know what those standards are. She doesn't care either. Only both these headmasters know quietly what the reality is. So mother turns to the chai wala and asks, "Bhaiya, padhai kisme achhi hoti hai?" And that's end of the story. So only if this profound question had a simple answer that that was known to the chai wala, as much as it was known to Hina's mother. By the end of this discussion, don't harbor hopes that you will know the answer. But I hope we arrive at some ideas that can help our 24.7 crore children now and their parents like Hina's mother discover the answer and activate their informed school choices. So, talking of new age governance frameworks, we know the National Education Policy calls of setting up a state school standards authority, a regulator of school that would set uniform and consistent standards for all schools, private or public, aided or unaided, minority or majority, national or international, state board or central board. Its functions are, as listed in the policy, to establish uniform school quality standards and light touch regulations based on disclosures rather than mandates, to emphasize the importance of learning outcomes-based regulation over an input-based approach, to incorporate an effective school quality accreditation system for all schools, to solve for information asymmetry through public disclosure of school information so that parents and stakeholders can make informed decisions, to solve for conflict of interest in the education ecosystem by separating regulatory functions from executive functions, both of which are currently performed by Department of Education, and to provide for a grievance redressal system to give consumers of education voice against false disclosures. A very ambitious goal, and that's why I have this esteemed panelist who would give some insights on these. At the end of it all, once these governance measures are implemented, this is to ensure all schools prioritize quality education, particularly quality learning outcomes, ensures fair competition, and enables school choices. So with this context, let me turn to my panelists. My first question is to Ms. Professor Pranati Panda. The governments need to operationalize a SSSA in every state as per the National Education Policy. Now, school standards are at the core of this authority. You have developed and iterated the Shala Siddhi framework, which many of the schools present here have also implemented. It is still being used for many school evaluation and continuous improvement by some schools. So in your view, what are those minimum enforceable standards that can apply to all schools? And how should these be separated from the standards which anyway schools have, which they follow, which they use for their self-evaluation and self-improvement? How are regulatory standards different from the improvement standards?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here around. I would just share my perspective, lagging with the anecdotes what Kapil has shared. It is communicating us that we are working in a very diversified school education ecosystem and hierarchical nature, and choices are playing very critical role to select which school to go. Second point, linking all these hierarchical structure of schooling under different management and having a governance system. Over these last 70, 80 years after independence, our governance structure, I would just quickly flag 2 points. It's a multi-layered, multi-decision making, but at the end we want change within the schools. So we need to look at a very controlled governance model to a new age governance model, or we can look at the very developmental governance model. When we are talking about the developmental governance model, my third point is that we need to understand each school, irrespective of their diversity, as a dynamic platform. Schools should improve continuously with a very incremental direction to provide good quality education, or all children should learn, all children should also achieve the holistic development that our NEP has recommended. Now, in order to achieve that, how school need to perform, how school need to improve over a period of time as dynamic learning space for the children. We need to understand that. It's dynamic and we are providing learning space to the children for the holistic development. Within that framework, what Kapil has raised the question, do we need any kind of standards to provide some kind of direction to all the school to engage in the pathways of transformation or improvemental pathways? That is the major question. As he has mentioned, we had really implemented a program on national program on school standards and evaluation with twin objectives. One is evaluation for improvement, performance evaluation of the school. Then when we are talking about performance evaluation of the school, how do we measure it? How do we look at it? Whether the people sitting outside the school should evaluate the school performance, or school themselves can look within how they are improving. The major genesis perspective of this concept was empowering each school. And we need to understand each school within the unique context and condition. That understanding we need to penetrate in the diversified ecosystem of the Indian school. Next point, when we are flagging, how do we really empower school through a directional manner? By pronouncing the standards. So the question comes here, what do you mean by standards? Can standards be same for all school with the diversified nature? Answer could be yes, the answer could be no. But we need to understand the very core principles of all schools, the core activities of all the schools. So if you look at this diversified school, I have classified, though 10 years before I never conceptualized this, but now when I'm working as the chairman for the Bureau of Indian Standard, I could look at what are the non-negotiable standards for the school which all schools should adhere to. Those non-negotiable standards, when I'm talking, it could be of starting from infrastructure, physical, human, digital, and also some of the rights perspective, and as well as the teaching learning perspective. So how do you institutionalize this non-negotiable standard? And governance plays the critical role. And if you look at the ecosystem of the government managed school, there are many activities schools cannot do. The system has to support them. Second part is that when we are pronouncing other standards, maybe linking to teaching, learning, and assessment, be it competency-based or understanding of learners, or continuous professional development of teachers, or learners' progress, development and attainment, school leadership. We need to identify these core standards which are common across all the schools. And how do we pronounce this standard which would support the school to create the pathways for transformation? How do you pronounce it? It is not conformatory in nature. The whole hidden agenda is that within this process, they would look at the current level of their performance, where they are performing and how they need to move ahead. So there are two concepts, we call it as a micro points to improve the performance of the school, or granular point, or you can call it as a benchmark which all schools should strive to achieve. If not, so that kind of framework would facilitate the school for the improvement. Second question, Kapil, I'll just take a few minutes to explain. How do you write these standards? In Indian ecosystem, we are very much happy with the very confirmatory statement. Do you have toilet? Do you have library? So we are happy with that? No. The standards measurement process or mapping process could be combination of activities school can understand. That would support them if I am at a particular level, how I can incrementally move and put the efforts to go ahead. And in this principle, we aligned the concept of education management principle. Even the new age governance should bring the concept of education management principle, prioritization, taking initiative, action, and incremental improvement of the performance. So this concept we institutionalized and created that ecosystem. Amongst other, we need to understand school from the standard performance perspective, and self-evaluation is the core of this concept. Schools need to look at their performance through the lens of these standards. And how we have written the standard, it should be non-threatening, it should be in developmental nature. Thank you, Kapil.
Great, ma'am. I heard that these standards need to be something which applies to all schools, however, still should respect the context in which they are done. And they should respect schools' autonomy. They should respect that schools need to be given the freedom to self-report versus any inspection that must be happening in these schools. Thank you, Pranati ma'am. Then from standard setting, we now move to ensuring accountability. See, everyone champions accountability as long as they aren't the ones being made accountable. Same applies to all our institutions as well. So Shailendra ji, my question is to you now. You have worked with both people representatives as well as government executive bureaucracy. School-wise comparable information can empower the public, sure, but it can also create fear among politicians and officials. So from your work with both elected representatives and the bureaucrats, how can a state design school-level transparency framework so that it is politically motivating, yet administratively feasible?
Well, the state has already designed. Pranati ji explained what she has designed. So the question should be flipped. Ki whatever has been designed or whatever has been said, why those are not implemented in letter and in spirit? Look at the National Education Policy 2020. Now the chapter 8 is exclusively on standard setting and accreditations. But if you look at closely, this policy is touted by the central government as one of the path-breaking education reform of this century, or at least post-independence. But if you go closely, you will see that this provision is something which is not very often talked from the government platforms. Why? So these are the questions we have to ask. It's not that people don't have ideas or there are no design available, but why is it that those ideas or design do not find acceptance? I would, as you said, I have had experience of working with both. In fact, not just the two sides, but the third side also, civil society as well. And what I feel is that the question should be like who is going to be benefited by that, or who is going to be affected if such a standard and protocol is established. Now, among several things, if you look at it in the new education policy, you will find that there are certain things which have to be done by the academician, certain things to be done by the political leadership, certain things to be done by the bureaucrats. The things which are to be done by the bureaucrats are the one which is the slowest. And if you were to create a standard society, I mean, you see, the chapter 8 talks about creating 3 structures. And one of them is to setting standards so that there is a level playing field for private schools, government schools, aided schools. And what it is expected to do is to not just create a level field, but also to ensure that those are there. But that will require dividing the power of the Directorate of Education. Currently, that unit has both the set of power running the government school as well as regulating the private schools. So for all the framework that Pranati ji has created, and this is not a new thing, Shala Siddhi predates education policy. And it's a very comprehensive framework. But somebody will have to own it with an authority to do that. And that ownership has to be created through structure. And once you create that structure, you are essentially yielding power from one unit to another. And that unit at the moment is not willing to share that power. So the problem lies here. Somebody, now you'll ask me, okay, you've identified the problem, what is the solution? I would say that the solution lies with the political leadership. Because nobody who has got certain power, I'll give you a very interesting example in this sense. I started working with the Delhi government as an education advisor in 2016 early. I remember in one of the meetings with the deputy directors, with the education minister, Mr. Sisodia used to be the education minister and deputy CM then. In one of the meetings, he was asking them about what is the problem that you face. And the deputy director said, sir, बहुत ना administrative काम बहुत ज़्यादा करना पड़ता, हमको तो टाइम ही नहीं मिल पाता कि हम स्कूलों में पढ़ाई लिखाई की चीज़ों को जाकर के देख सकें. Private schools take up a lot of our time because we have to monitor them, we have to regulate them. He said, okay. Incidentally, what happened in the next couple of months, a few Danik officers were posted in Delhi. So what he decided कि ठीक है, we'll create a dual structure. हम एक zone या district where the number of private schools are more, we will place one officer over there. And the academic function, the government school function will be done by this deputy director, and the administrative function vis-a-vis private school would be handled by these officers. Next day, these same deputy directors approached the office of director education then, saying, madam, ये तो गजब हो गया, हमारा तो power छीन लिया जा रहा है. And why? Because with that regulatory power, the real power comes. डंडा का power चाहिए ना. तो वो वहाँ से आता है कि then you can go there and हड़काओ कि अच्छा, you are like missing on these points. So that is the power that has to be yielded by the current authority to be vested in some other authority, so that authority can hold the government school also accountable. I remember when the Right to Education Act was being discussed, in that avatar I raised this point with the parliamentary committee, कि you are, I mean, who is going to hold the government accountable for this? If the government doesn't meet, of all 118 charter Lakshas here, he will be able to better tell about how many norms a private school has to follow. Can anybody say that all those norms are actually followed by the government school also? Nobody asked that question. And it cannot be asked because आप ही अगर judge हो, आप ही वकील हो और आप ही petitioner हो, तो फिर कैसे वो हो सकता है? So that is why this authority had to be created. So I think the solution lies in reaching out to the political leadership and explaining them. You see, there are several beautiful provisions in the national education policy. This is one thing where you will have to put your foot down, because it is not about creating better avenues of schooling. I mean, we have examples of excellence in both government school as well as in private schools. The point here is that the thousandth school, the last school on your radar, or the last child in that particular school, are they getting what you have set out to do that? And in order to know that, you have to create this authority. And so that you know what you have planned and what you have envisaged for your school is actually happening in the last school. And that is something that would require convincing. Because so long as the executive leadership is concerned, as I said, it's a power dynamics. They would not take initiative. They have not taken initiative in the last 5 years. They will not take initiative next 5 years also. So the political leadership has to be tapped on this front.
Great. No, thanks for very raw insights on this, sir. You're right that among all the initiatives which are called out in the national policy, this one remains the one where there is most hush-hush or the least implemented as of today. And according to you, it's the political leadership who has to be mobilized to get this reform moving. Thank you. Now, if it is about political leadership which has to be mobilized, we also have to see that the institutional design needs to be changed, which is at the core of this reform. To ensure that there is honesty, there is transparency, the institutional design itself is paramount. And Dhanu Raj ji, since you have been working for the last 20 years on policy space, my next question is to you. NEP says independent institution. क्या होता है independent institution? Can a body be truly independent of the state? Can governance check, what governance checks should be ensured to reach independence, and what will be its benefits, and also what will be its costs, both to the state and to the citizenry?
Thank you for this opportunity. Thanks to Amit and CCS team for inviting me. Last 20 years, if I had an answer, I think, for this question, what is independence and what is independent institution, what is the composition of independent institution, I would not have sat here to answer that. But one thing comes to my mind when you ask this question, digressing from the topic, independence is also about accountability and performance and measurement of what that body is actually delivering. Whether BCCI is the most independent institution in the country, because they, last 3 years we got 3 or 4 ICC championship, so that is what is mandated. As a governing body or regulatory body in the sports cricket, we won, but that does mean whether that means it's independent or not. That's a question we need to ask. I start from an anecdote. Early this year, one state government, again digressing from the topic, one of the state governments asked our team, to work on again not in education, film. You prepare a film policy for our state. So I was actually wondering, why should we have a film policy? You watch film and then, why?
Sorry?
Film policy.
Okay.
Do we need a film policy? That was my academic question to internally, and also to the state government asked me to do this. Because why should we have a film policy? But the point that they're making was that, film policy, the reason why in their, the justification was that in the film sets and, a lot of people involved in this, and there is harassment, there are labor issues, whether it is very private in nature, whether state labor regulation should come into the effect or not. Then again, we actually, finally we worked on that policy, but keeping the private space living to the film world, certain norms that probably for the public costs, we said we can have an independent body to look at it. And again, the composition of the body should be the representatives from the film industry. If you apply that logic here, we say 23 crore kids are going to school. And the general question would be like, I'm also a parent. So my kid goes to school, probably we are concerned about the safety sometimes. We are concerned about we recently did a work in South India where we were looking at some of the challenges that schools in South India are facing. So everybody is quoting this one interesting example. Kumbakonam fire tragedy in Tamil Nadu in 2003 or 2004. Then government stepped in and said that you can't do so many things because so many kids burned alive. So that was the issue they were confronting with. So for me, my 20 years of experience looking at different policy issues, not only in education, this issue keeps coming back, the independent regulatory body. My take on this subject is few cardinal principles that one has to follow to make it independent and accountable. One is there any proper legislation or mandate given to this particular body? Who in what way this body is designed and composed of. We said national education policy actually has given the directions how this policy should, how this independent SSSA should be. Now it's up to the state government to design. Then whether they are forming it by legislative process or by a government notification, saying that this is the body that we are advocating or we want to see in reality. That is very important. Any independent body should have a mandate. Who has given that mandate? How does that enjoy that power? From where that power derives from? That should be clearly defined. Second is the composition of the body. That is where the problem lies with. The composition mostly, I think, starting from all our regulatory bodies to so-called, they are also supposed to be an independent body. This is like a parking lot for many of the retired bureaucrats and judges, and also officials who was working with different department concerned with, or probably not with. If it is in education, probably we get somebody from other department to see, doesn't have any understanding about it. So we should actually define what should be the composition of the body. Who are the members of the body? How are they accountable to the body? And what is the mandate to the body? Like I referred to BCCI, what is that? What is the performance indicators of this body? Where they can get into, where they should not get into. And again, tenure of this composition. You can't be there forever. And I largely believe any independent body, 1/3 of the members should retire every year or every 2 years, so that there are fresh perspectives, fresh thoughts, and also it is not, they are not rooted in that system for a long time. The fourth point would be the power that they hold. It happens in many independent bodies, or so-called independent bodies. I don't know whether is there any independent, as far as I see. My first example is that, probably the cute example I always give is BCCI, because people judge by that, what is the performance of the Indian cricket team. The judicial power they hold or not, whether they have the investigative power, or if they have the investigative power, to what extent they can do the investigative power. Because it's very complicated subject at times. If somebody is not following compliance, then falling into that compliance system, then what is a remedial step?
Judicial power. Can they demand evidence?
Are they doing policing or not? Or they doing the dispute settlement, right? Then accountability, of course, very important. Transparency. I think how they arrive at the decision, everybody should know. Most of the things. Because it should not be another education department where you have a bias and there is a discretionary decision making happens in the education department today. That should not be replicated in this independent body. If you have proper, clearly defined process where even including taking inputs from the stakeholders, sharing the public domain, have a process, institutionalized process to arrive at the decision from time to time. And the final point would be how often you update your mandate. Because I think when we started this school choice conference 12 years back, I don't think we discussed digital education. Today, we are in the digital era, and then access to digital platforms are very much there. So how often we update ourselves, and what is the mandate you're given to this independent body to update themselves so that it's relevant to the time. So I think this is mostly definite mandate, not a discretionary mandate. I don't know, is there anything?
Thank you for those key principles which can define independence. I'll come back to you with a separate question on how this independence then can be ensured as institutionally. But before that, Shailendra ji, may I get back to you? Let's from institutional design go back to the real beneficiaries of this initiative, which is parents. You have spent years listening closely to parents in Delhi as well as in other places. You have also spotlighted the concern of poor learning outcome attainment across the state and across the school managements, public and private, in your work with Pratham. So when a state school standards authority puts out school-wise information publicly, what are some non-negotiable elements that, according to you, parents genuinely would want to look for and would want to use in their school choices? And what can safely be left out without confusing or overwhelming the parents? So in a sense, the question is, what disclosures can really make schools focus on prioritizing learning outcomes as against the other objectives that we know schools prioritize and the objectives with which they purportedly run the school?
So how many of you are parent of a school-going child right now? So what exactly you look forward to? What do you ask your own child? I remember when we were children ourselves, most of the time our parents would ask, report card जब लेकर के जाते थे स्कूल का आता था तो उसको देखा जाता था. We still do that. Look at the report card. And the second question that you ask as a parent is कि तुम्हारे दोस्तों के कितने नंबर आए? ना? So these two indicators have like stood since time immemorial. Even now, as a parent, you look forward to these two things. कि आपके कितने नंबर आए और आपके दोस्तों के कितने आए. तो अगर दोस्तों के ज़्यादा आ गए हैं तो थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो जाती थी. अभी भी शायद होती है. Now, I remember in 2015, we had formed in Delhi government school a real school management committees. Real school management committee in a sense कि for the first time वाकई पेरेंट्स से एप्लीकेशन बुला के उनको समझा करके कि आप स्कूल मैनेजमेंट कमेटी का हिस्सा बनाइए. बिकॉज प्रायर टू दैट स्कूल मैनेजमेंट कमिटीज वर फॉर्म्ड बाय द स्कूल प्रिंसिपल बेस्ड अपॉन हु दे वांटेड टू पिक एंड चूज सो दैट कोई सवाल वाल ना पूछे. एंड व्हेन द रिजल्ट केम ऑफ दैट ईयर in class 9, as always, which has been going on prior to that for the last 4 years, about 50% children of class 9 had failed. So the parents for the first time came and protested in the school कि हमारे बच्चे fail कैसे हो गए? Fail कई सालों से हो रहे थे. Ever since the no detention provision in the Right to Education Act came, everybody was getting promoted, and then all of a sudden in class 9, when the first exam would happen, that will determine whether the child would proceed to the next grade or not, all. Otherwise, पहले क्या था कि prior to that कि in different grades children would be. So you will not get a one big lot in class 9. That started happening from 2011 onwards. But until 2015, it remained unchecked. Because there was no mechanism, the parents would think कि मेरा ही बच्चा fail हुआ होगा. They did not know that the problem is large scale. It is affecting many other children also. And when this platform got created in the school, they were able to talk among themselves, क्या हुआ? Where is the result? How come so many? And then they came and protested. And their question was, कि how come suddenly my child is not fit enough to even pass when for the last 8 years, she has been coming to school and passing every year? And the next question some of them asked was, कि if for the last 8 years this child of mine was with you, so how come my child failed and you passed as a teacher, as a school? I was sending my child every day to school, my child was coming to school, your report card said that she is passing to the next grade, and now after 9 or 8 years, you tell me that the child is not even good enough to move to the next grade. And these questions were coming from even the parents who themselves have never gone to school. Now, I think as a parent, this is a critical question that the school should be able to answer. You cannot simply hand over the result and say कि आप पास हो गए, आप फेल हो गए, आप आगे जाओगे, आप नहीं जाओगे. Where is my जिम्मेदारी as a school? And fixing that zimmedari of that school is the responsibility of the state. So as I said, till they had no idea that a large number of children were passing, because, failing. Till they thought that, okay, मतलब मैं बोलूँ भी तो कैसे जाके बोलूँ, because my child may not have performed. I am going to and the outcome would be then you would stop sending the child to school, drop out. But when the forum, when this information became available, then suddenly you got the confidence to even ask you what the hell is happening. So I think creating that kind of a platform where such vital informations are shared, are made available, that is what parent would be looking forward from their point of view. That's my suggestion on this.
Yeah, fair. So something which makes the parents aware of not just their child performance, but also school's performance on how well it is able to make their students learn, and how well it is distinguishing between, it is able to make even the students who are struggling learn better.
Right. And one more thing, sorry. And not overwhelming. Not in the language that only academician can understand. Many a time what we happens, and that happens in the school education segment, कि we overcomplicate things. ऐसा डेटा बनाओ, ऐसा रिजल्ट बनाओ कि वो बनाने वाले के अलावा और किसी को समझ में ही नहीं आए, हैं? So and nobody will then ask also ना कि इतना तो कॉन्फिडेंस हमने किसी में दिया नहीं कि पूछ लें पब्लिकली कि भाई मुझे नहीं समझ में आया, बिकॉज तब तो सब हंसेंगे. तो एवरीबडी विल क्वाइटली सिट कि हम ही को नहीं समझ में आया, जबकि समझ किसी को नहीं आया. It took me years to understand NAS data. Let me publicly admit this. ठीक है कि कहना क्या चाह रहे हो यार, मतलब हो क्या रहा है. So that's the thing, कि if you are doing such a mammoth exercise and presenting certain facts, then go from the logic of कि the end user उसे कैसे उसको access कर सकता है. So to a parent, if you are coming and saying बड़ी बड़ी चीज़ें, that would be very difficult. Say simply कि क्या सीखा क्या नहीं सीखा, कहाँ पे ज़रूरत है improvement पे, कहाँ पे नहीं ज़रूरत है. That is how it has to be put. Who is going to do it? I don't know. Among the current set of academicians, I don't have much confidence. So it has to be brought from the field only. Bring the people who are closer to the field to understand their perspective and create those kind of a tool.
No, one part what I liked about your argument is that when school's data would be disclosed, it may not be necessary that it is school's fault. It could be that the resources have not been supplied by the state or by their management. However, still the data needs to come out. Still it needs to be shown so that the real accountability can be fixed. So Dhanu Raj ji, back to the argument that you made in your previous question. You said independence has to be ensured through these principles. Now there is some trend also which is being seen across the states. Several states are naming their existing bodies, like their academic institutions, SCRTs, or examination boards as their school standards authority. This is basically to save effort and to capitalize on their current infrastructure and capacity. So from your vantage point, what are the real risks and trade-offs of this approach? And when does administrative convenience start to undermine the credibility and effectiveness of the regulator itself?
I don't agree. I don't support, or I don't agree with the.
What do you not support?
Meaning, changing the name of a body to SSSA is not the solution. I mean, if that was the case, then we would not have discussed this. Because we know why SSSA is advocated or suggested as a solution, because the system has got its own conflicts and biases, and it's not transparent, and they have their own issues. But I can also understand from the government's point of view that you want to they want to save time to announce it, so that we also complied with the larger policy goal. As I said in the first round, these all institutions becomes a parking lot, right? So this is a different way of ensuring that they continue with the system and they are continue in the system forever. We should come up with a new institutional mechanism. And I don't mind some of the existing institutions are repealed or closed down or suspended. If that is a physical concern you have, I think the institution should have financial, administrative, and functional independence. Otherwise, the existing institutions changing their color. Basically, you are changing the color of the dress that you're wearing, right? But the characteristics of individuals and institutional mechanisms are not changing, even if you add and amend the existing rules and regulations that oversee this system. So that is not the right way forward.
Right. Thank you for those insights. Just changing the color or name is not going to help. The independence has to be ensured in the letter and spirit and not just in the name. My last question, I've been shown the timer also, Pranati ji, is to you. And this is about empowering parents with the ability to make the system accountable through grievance redressal. So one of the tenets of this body is going to be that it will allow parents to raise complaints or grievances or disputes against the information disclosed by the schools. On this, Pranati ji, my question to you is, see, since grievance redressal is central to any regulator, leave alone school quality regulator, it can easily slide into a layer of harassment by the authorities. They may say that parents are dissatisfied, you are doing a bad job as a school. And even schools can also victimize the parents, the very parent who is raising these grievances, that you have complained against us, now we are going to do bad to your child. So all these are slippery slopes which can happen. From a capacity and implementation point of view, how can states build a responsive grievance redressal system that SSSA will make accessible and trusted and does not create a heavy-handedness so that schools don't come with heavy hand on the parents and government authorities also don't come with heavy hand on the schools. And since the time is short, maybe it will help if you can be very
quickly. I just want to share with you the whole conceptualization of SSSA. Why NEP 2020 has conceptualized, because somewhere the governance model and the school education sector, they are not contributing as per the expectation. So there would be one agency which could look at, oversees the performance of the system at the state level. That we need to clarify whether this authority would have independence. The Constitution now, Minister of Education has sent a letter to all the states to constitute SSSA. In one model or second model, third model, but beginning has to be made. Second point is that before I come to the grievance cell, in India we need to change our vocabulary, the learning outcome of the children. Without looking within the school, are children responsible for their own learning, or it is parents or school? And whether National Achievement Survey or Pratham Learning Survey should not use the terminology like learners and children associating. And I have seen it in the international platform talking about Indian children, which we should really look within the school why children are not learning. And parental voice, when we come about, we look at the children who are studying in the government school. I categorize them under two categories: empowered parents and disempowered parents. So empowered parents can put their grievances at the school level or at the government level or at the authority level, but disempowered parents are tolerant to the core. They themselves are ignorant about their right and raising the voices. That's why they are sometimes alienated from the system, and whatever is offered to them, they take it. So we need to understand that nuances in a much more critical way. My last one is that we need to look at the entire concept in a cohesive whole. And I just gave my what Shailendra ji was mentioning. The whole national program on school standard evaluation was initiated with the sentences of Honorable Prime Minister Modi and the then Finance Minister Jaitley. But the question is here, in spite of your 10 years of investment, how much we really prepared the school system and bring changes to assimilate and improve the school performance in order to improve the learning outcomes of the learner. So sustainability is continuing as a major issue and creating a very, very, we need not really create that ecosystem where many grievances would come up. You need to give that enabling platform so that most of the issues relating to the children or parent need to be settled within the school ecosystem. They need not go beyond and beyond and beyond to put their grievances, but violation of the child rights, violation of the parental rights need to be addressed in a very, very serious way, whether you consider as a grievance redressal forum, but equally, I just want to plug one point. Education department, education governance structure is struggling with lack of court cases, either by the teachers or by the system. So how do we really create it? It affects the mental health of the people who are working within the school, and also mental health of the other people. Like in Tamil Nadu, I could see one teacher winning a case, they could close down 15,000 of similar cases raised by the teacher. So my last point is that please look at the new age governance structure from the developmental perspective, keeping child at the center stage, but when you are aligning it with the learning, keep that with the school or with the system. How do we create a better learning ecosystem so that we can achieve the objective of NEP 2020, that is holistic development of all children. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, my panelists. Do we have any time for audience questions, or do we have? Okay, great, thank you very much. Yeah, Mr. Dhanu Raj has a flight, so he'll have to leave. Thanks a lot, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
Thank you. All right, thank you, sir.
Could you wait a minute? We would like to invite Mr. Martin Kennedy to felicitate you. Mr. Martin Kennedy.
I had
Yes,
one question.
Questions.
I'm Bharat Malik from Maharashtra, NISA member. This question is to Sharma ji. When RTE came, we were so happy. Right to education for child has come. And it was well defined that child is the center. And there was a responsibility given to the private sector to take 25% admissions in the school. Believe me, in the state of Maharashtra, for 7 years, the money has not come to the school. The success of RTE. RTE gave you the child should be pushed to the next level and no examination. And that is what Sharmaji said, that was a real reason where learning, and there was nothing happening in the school, in many schools. Now coming to my simple question to you, we talk about so many things, but I think our education system is confusion. You go to a bloody officer, he said, तुम्हाला पाहिजे file घेऊन जा, आणि याच्यावर तू file बनव. Officers also don't know. And suddenly online came. तो बोलते यार online करेगा, पैसा कहाँ से मिलेगा? पैसा कहाँ से मिलेगा? आप ऑनलाइन फाइल दे दो तो फिर नीचे से फाइल चलाओ, वो फाइल जाएगा, कभी ऑनलाइन कभी ऑफलाइन. Corruption has gone to that level. A permission in Maharashtra requires 22 lakhs. And this is happening, and the main cause for all this problem is corruption in this country in education sector. And then we start blaming, ये government school है, ये private school है. Entire system is collapsed. I'm hopeful new policies come, but implementation of the policies are not there. Sharmaji, tell me how this will happen. We, as educators, come to these conferences with a lot of questions, a lot of hopes, and then what happens? You go back, the system remains the same. Thank you.
Is this a question?
बहुत सारी भावनाएं थी उसमें, तो
कैसे solve करेंगे sir? How will we solve this?
देखिए, अगर मेरे पास कोई जादू का छड़ी होती तो मैं अभी घुमाता और ये सॉल्व हो जाता. But what you are highlighting is a very serious concern, and instead of simplifying the systems and process, the policy makers and the government, successive governments have added more layers. So ऐसा हो गया है कि पूरा जैसे घर कबाड़ खाना होता है ना घर पे, कि एक के बाद आप कोई चीज़ हटाते नहीं हो, you don't move anything out, you just keep adding on to that. So what concern that you have raised is genuine. And that is why I said when I was making my submission that bureaucrats love to complicate things because of the reason that you just mentioned. And it is the political constituent which have to be sensitized कि how politically it would be good for them if they were to clear this mess. अब वो कैसे होगा? State by state dynamics varies. I'll give you Delhi's example. Now Delhi में school education is governed by a 50-year-old law which has become obsolete. ठीक है ना? The moment parents pressurized and 100 parent assembled कि ये fees का hike कैसे private school मनमानी तरीके से कर रहे हैं, within 6 months of the new government they made a law of regulating that. But other aspects are not coming onto the fore. ठीक है? So what kind of pressure group is created and who is pushed becomes important. Now I feel, and this is my personal opinion, that many of the private schools, खास तौर से are too, like what you say, डरे हुए होते हैं to take things head on. I think they have to really take, भाई we are doing a social service. We are not like कि आपके रहमो करम पे नहीं है. We are running this institution and we came into existence because you failed to provide quality education to all children of India. So you cannot take us for a ride. We will shut down the school, but we are not going to bow down to this thing. 1,000 children studying in my school are going to be out of school if you do not take them to your school wherever you feel like. Because उसके अलावा और कोई नहीं. This is the voice that is heard and given heed to. Otherwise, you know how things work. So I don't think there is easy solution to that. But the private school as a collective body will have to force. And they have to be clear कि हम भी कोई मनमानी, we are not here for profiteering. We are very sure about that. Make that claim if you have the guts. कि we are not here to profiteer. There are many private schools who do those. But एक दो का example लेकर you cannot tarnish the image of the entire sector. Those who are not, those who are doing wrong, आप उनको punish करिए. But on that light, you cannot take entire private school sector for a ride. Take that position. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I would like to park a simple query or facing an issue as a parent, like private schools taking high fees, everything. We are paying that. But still we have to send our child to a tuition centers where the education centers are and what education they are doing. And then we are asking like an ASA report or a Pratham report, like children are not able to read a single word. So I think there is some gap in our education system or schools or teachers. I need some answer because I'm facing day-to-day problem in this as a parent.
So ma'am, can you please articulate what is the question here?
So my question is like, as in a grievance part, we are paying a high fee to the schools, but still not getting a proper education from them. We have to go out. We have to hire some tutors. Why?
Okay. Pranati ma'am, would you want to take this question?
The whole question of government, private, who is providing what quality of education, I would link to the question of, sir, 25% reservation in private school. Why did we do that, 25%? With what objectives? And why we are not empowering or strengthening, nurturing the 87% of our school managed by the government? Why searching for quality through the agency? I do understand the accountability and of the private schools need to admit the disadvantaged students because they have taken the land in a subsidized rate, and also constitutionally they need to adhere to that 25%. But equally, the accountability of the government and this governance model should nurture the government school. They cannot escape from it. And the question madam is raising, it is the choice of the school. Because of the marketization and other thing, we are looking for good quality always. If I have money, I would not compromise anything, whether education or any kind of my lifestyle. In the same way, if middle class parents, they are opting for the private school, whether you call it, they are taking more fees or fee regulation by the system, by the government is required. So somehow, in order to manage the private school and their fee structure, many states have taken cognizance of it. Because amongst the private school, the schools are very, very diversified, or you can call it heterogeneous. Pathway school is providing the quality of this level to another private school. So you cannot fix a fees as per the facilities they are providing. Another concern to the audience here, there is a greater transition of this private school towards the internationalization of school. Like they are going from national curriculum to the international curriculum, and Indian parents have also opting for that kind of choices. So what lesson we are learning for that, particularly the government sector, which has got the, when I was looking the funding pattern, education is the second in the rank, what they are investing on education. Still then we have small school, single teacher school, we are demanding some other school. So we need to look at, even if having finance, resources and also the participation of the foundations and NGOs, many other investment, still we are unable to provide the basic what sir was raising the quality as well as also bringing change within the school education sector. वो change क्या रहना चाहिए? And what kind of changes we are really visualizing? Kapil, I just want to mention here, which I am pushing in all platform, हर state के पास, एक हर राज्य के पास, NEP national level federal structure में कुछ बोल रहा है, but they need to have a white paper or a brief document or state document, what kind of transformation they want to achieve within a year time, 2 years time, 5 years time. And some of you are already working with the state agency, push that idea, very directional kind of change. Abrupt things are coming. I do agree with Shailendra ji. It is piling and piling. There is no concept of convergence because people are changing, new concepts are changing, and we need to understand our ecosystem. The very political in ecosystem, and we are some good rank in corruption, good rank in other as well. So education is not free from that, but how do we bring changes? Because multiple agencies are working, we need to work in tandem, and each state should have a document wherein they can pronounce the critical role of different agency. And SSSA, I'm just telling you, it's not only meant for school, it is also meant for the secretary who is working for the school. After 75 of good governance, if you call it, bringing decentralization, school management committees, parental participation and everything, still then system has changing either positively or negatively, but marginal good changes from the citizenry perspective, I would call it. Thank you.
Great. I think we are just having the scope for one more question. And, oh, I see 4 or 5 hands. What do we do? Okay, time up bhi ho gaya. Okay, we can take one more question. From the back. Yes. My tribe.
Thank you very much for the really insightful panel. The question that I have to the panel is, when we talk about the new age governance and especially with emphasis of NEP, we have discussed competency at length today. However, the NEP gives us a target of achieving 100% enrollment at the school level by 2030, 50% enrollment at higher education level by 2035. So are we trying to promote a narrative through the education policy that everyone should be involved into formal education and taking away the idea of competency development in informal education? Or are we trying to also create a structure where we support informal education and competency development there? And a quick second part to that question is that we have also discussed that we currently also lack resources, and the funding, as ma'am mentioned, is not as much. So in the next 10 years, since we want to take in more people into our institutions, do we think we have the resources to be able to provide quality to all of them? Because along with having people, quality has always been a concern in India's education system.
Do you have any preference for the panelist you want to address it to?
No, not anyone.
Okay. Some other people also had some questions, right? Maybe if we can have them together, they can be answered. Yes, sir.
The clarity both the panelists have about this situation that we are passing through. I'm Paranjyoti, Vice President NISA. I'm from Hyderabad. My question is, education is a reflection of the society. if you observe, if you look for any education governance reforms, the demand for education or awareness education, demand for education comes from the awareness of education in the families. If you look down to the marginalized families, survival is the need of those families. The next level, after satisfying the survival level, I mean, it based on Maslow's theory. Next comes the security, then comes the respect, then comes the freedom. So now, the government has to think about how to promote these families from one layer to other layer. So what the government should plan in order to make these families or the marginalized communities that are still lying at the survival level of educational need. I need both of you to please respond.
Wow. Profound question. Okay, we can take one more and together we'll have it.
You were raising the hand. आपके बगल में जो लक्ष्य आपके सामने जो ये आप you were raising हाँ बताएं.
हमने सुबह से काफ़ी डिस्कशन किया. प्रॉब्लम्स हम सबके सामने हैं, परंतु हमारी हालत ऐसी हो गई कि हम जिस टीम से बात करना चाह रहे हैं, उनको जो टीम से हम मैच खेल रहे हैं, प्राइवेट वर्सेस गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी मेकर्स, वो फाउल खेलने वाले हैं एंड हम चाहते हैं कि वो अपना तरीका सुधार दें. इस पूरे समस्या में जो एग्रीव्ड है वो कौन है? एग्रीव्ड है या एक्सप्लॉइटेड है वो है स्टूडेंट, राइट? सो व्हाई डोंट वी educate or inform our students, particularly class 10, 11, 12 के students को अगर हम educate करते हैं और सारे डाटाज के साथ करते हैं, 4 साल के अंदर में वही लोग होंगे वोट देने वाले, वही लोग होंगे डीबीटी क्लेम करने वाले, और वही जो अभी पूरे हिंदुस्तान के अंदर में एक मतलब मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन जो है वो कि प्राइवेट स्कूल्स कॉस्टली हैं, गवर्नमेंट स्कूल सस्ते हैं. प्राइवेट स्कूल महंगे इसलिए लगते हैं लोगों को क्योंकि हमारे स्टूडेंट्स को और पेरेंट्स को ये पता नहीं है कि गवर्नमेंट स्कूल फ्री नहीं हैं. वो हमारा जो हमारे फीस का कंपैरिजन वो 0 फीस से करते हैं, राइट? जब उनको ये कंपैरिजन हम ये बताएंगे कि हमारा जो फीस है वो वर्सेज आप उसका जो कंपैरिजन है 7,000 या 6,000 के साथ कीजिए, तब उनको उनका जो हमारे प्रति रेस्पेक्ट है स्कूलों के प्रति वो बढ़ेगा. वहाँ से सॉल्यूशन निकलेगा. हमने अभी पीछे CCS के साथ में मिलके ही एक 3 दिन का सेमिनार करवाया था, हमारे यहाँ कोर्स करवाया था और सर्टिफिकेट कोर्स है, और CCS को थैंक्स बोलना चाहता हूँ. हमारे करीब 40 बच्चों को उसमें ट्रेनिंग दिया 3 दिन के लिए. नाउ दे हैव बिकम आवर स्पोक्स पर्सन. आप एक छोटा सा फुटबॉल मैच भी आप डिफेंसिव होके नहीं जीत सकते, हमें ऑफेंसिव होना पड़ेगा. हमारी लिमिटेशंस हो सकती हैं, किंतु एग्रीव्ड इसमें और एक्सप्लॉइटेड जब बच्चा है उनकी बात हमें उनके द्वारा ही करनी पड़ेगी, तब जाके सिस्टम सुधरेगा और जरूर सुधरेगा.
सर, हम बिल्कुल आपकी भावनाओं को समझते हैं, लेकिन ये रेड कार्ड हमें जो दिखाया जा रहा है ये हमें इस समय हमें पूछना पड़ेगा. तीनों क्वेश्चंस का कंसोलिडेशन. Why are we moving towards standardization when uniqueness is also called out in the NEP? Sir says, what about the last person in the socio-economic stratification? How can we reach them? And this sir says, how can the policies be inclusive for all schools as against just for government?
So very quick, एक line में standardization you cannot like do all. It's like setting a common minimum कि this is the minimum that every child or every school should have. Uske upar to sky is a limit. So standardization doesn't mean that you are creating a standard for everybody uniform. We are not like yet a totalitarian regime to create that kind of standardization, number one. Number two, jo sir ka baat hai ki, I believe it is the responsibility of the political leadership and state to ensure that every child gets education. ये समय होता तो मैं एक और कहानी सुनाता इस पर, आई हैड लाइक, बट अब टाइम नहीं है इसलिए नहीं कर सकते उस चीज़ को. बट वी कैनॉट पुट द ओनर्स बैक ऑन कि पेरेंट्स सोचे, ये सोचे, वो सोचे. It is the responsibility of the state. It is the function of the state. What kind of citizen you are creating? That is why we call you leaders. So leaders have to take leadership. And this is an issue we cannot, this is too important an issue to be left to individual families to decide based on their means, ways and means. Period. इसमें कोई debate नहीं. And the third point was, जो आपने suggestion दिया, बिल्कुल आप उसको करिए. Make children aware, let them be understand ki what's the political economy and the cost of education. Somebody is paying, there is nothing free. So whether it is a government school or a private school, कोई तो pay कर रहा है उस पूरी चीज को. Let children understand that. हाँ, so that's what I'm saying. Nothing comes for free. It was a good idea. आप please try करिए. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to my panelists for giving such an interesting and useful insights to everyone.